Former Wall Street analyst Ed Dowd, he's warning of a risk that he says he's never seen in his career, and it could impact markets and pensions alike. He's sounding the alarm that the U.S. and global economy face unusual and extreme systemic risk. Risk he says he has, quote, never seen in his career, end quote. Dowd's warnings, they're highlighted on Zero Hedge and in interviews with USA Watchdog. And they paint a much bleaker picture than the official economic rosiness that's being suggested. In a report titled Danger of Deep Worldwide Recession in 2025, Edward Dowd argues that long-running economic weakness was artificially propped up by government deficit spending, especially related to rapid population growth and immigration, which he says distorted the economy rather than producing real expansion. He told Greg Hunter with USA Watchdog that both the velocity of money and tenant rents previously booming housing are now rolling over, signaling deeper trouble. Quote, what we are going to have going forward is the reversal of deficit government spending. It never got us into expansion territory, but it papered over a lot of the ills we were seeing, end quote. Dowd, he was referring to recent economic distortions. He believes the downturn is already underway. He warns, quote, we are seeing a recession in 2025. The rest of the globe is already starting to roll over. It's going to be a worldwide recession, end quote. He attributes much of the fragility to housing stagnation, saying, quote, there is no transaction volume and nobody can afford homes, end quote. And tying the timing of the downturn to long-term housing cycles. Another dimension of Dowd's forecast is his view that the economy has entered a, quote, credit destruction cycle, end quote. More recent commentary, Dowd, he emphasized that rising delinquencies in customer credit and auto loans, along with looming rise in mortgage delinquencies, well, they are early warning signs that the systemic strain is spreading beyond just headline growth numbers. Quote, we are seeing consumer credit card delinquencies nearing all-time highs. The only way this clears is through price, end quote. He was referring to falling asset values and housing prices. On markets and investments, he continues to advocate for precious metals, particularly gold, as a hedge against what he predicts will be extended economic downturns and asset deflation. Quote, long-term, gold looks like it's going to $10,000 an ounce on the charts by 2030. Everything is conspiring to lead us that way, end quote. That's what he told the audience at USA Watchdog. Dowd also warned that the current economic expansion was, quote, fake, end quote, and it was driven more by policy distortions than organic growth, and that sectors like AI technology stocks, they're overvalued and they're vulnerable to sharp corrections similar to past bubbles. So taken all together, Ed Dowd's warnings from the recession forecast to credit stress and asset bubbles, well, it reflects one of the most ominous macroeconomic outlooks circling among independent analysts and financial commentators. Whether one agrees with his conclusions or not, his perspective, well, it represents a deeply bearish economic thesis that contrasts sharply with official optimism and the market's complacency. In a piece for American thinker, Vince Coyner, he argues that President Trump may be approaching a defining political turning point, one similar to, well, the importance of what George H.W. Bush said with his read my lips, no new taxes pledge that, well, made him a one-term president. But this time, President Trump's promise, of course, is centered around immigration enforcement and deportation. The author writes that Trump's current show of weakness on fulfilling his strong campaign promise to deport illegal aliens, it risks splintering the Republican Party itself right down the middle. He points out that Trump made some of the most specific immigration promises in recent U.S. presidential history, including bold statements like this, quote, immediately upon taking the oath of office, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history, end quote. And then he told NBC News that, quote, I think you have to do it, end quote. That was when he was asked about deporting all the individuals without legal status. Instead, the author notes that the actual number of deportations for the Trump administration has been relatively tiny, with particular pullback in high-profile states such as Minnesota. And then what appears to be the Trump administration softening its stance on illegal immigrant workers when it comes to certain industries. The author over at American Thinker argues that this perceived retreat, well, it's allowed opponents on the left to claim a heckler's veto. And it has emboldened businesses that are aligned with Republicans, what the author terms as the Chamber of Commerce wing. And thus, they have been pushing back on strict enforcement. And according to the article, this shift isn't just a matter of, well, policy nuance. It's becoming a political liability as Trump wanders from the hard line that he once articulated to now telling some in his administration reportedly to be mindful of how this impacts certain businesses. The author, he warns that if Trump does not follow through on his deportation promise, well, it could depress the turnout for Republicans at the midterm and cost them control of the Congress, as well as leave future nominees with a much steeper climb. So this is all about trust. President Trump didn't just campaign. He painted a target on the issue of illegal immigration that energized millions of Americans who felt the border crisis was an existential threat. Many of them felt it was a threat to their job or to the future of their children's ability to be employed. Not to mention the strain on our resources for our schools, policing, crime being one of the top ones. President Trump even campaigned on that, bringing out the family members of people that were murdered by illegal immigrants. President Trump's base didn't rally around vague rhetoric. They rallied around specific promises: mass deportation, enforcement, upholding the rule of law, and a willingness to use every lawful tool to do it, to get it done. Now, when the rank and file conservatives see that President Trump is walking back the energy that was behind those commitments, or at the very least, he's settling for some kind of technocratic half steps, the question they're asking is not just what happened, but who is he governing for? Who is he governing for? The base that put him in office, or the institutional press, or the chamber-aligned insiders, Chamber of Commerce, that is. And this whole narrative that critics are framing this enforcement as cruelty, Trump built political capital on a promise of action, not moderation. When promises fade without results, well, the loyalty fades. And if that happens, the fracture will not just cost votes, it will cost confidence in a movement that hinges on action, hinges on real results, not slogans. So in short, when a leader fails to deliver on his clearest, loudest, boldest commitments, not just policy that's going to falter. It's the very trust that makes governance possible. It's the trust in the party leader. And President Trump is the party leader. And if they lose trust in the party leader, they will not vote for his party. And the midterms are fast approaching. Great piece at the American Thinker.